You can't have a relationship without emotions, guys.
In my head.
Hey everybody, I am still sick, but that's why there was no video yesterday, so thank you for your patience. But I'm still sick. Here comes a car. And another car. So thank you for your patience while I am trying to feel better. It's actually kind of cold out tonight, so we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna do my walk as I normally do. I want to talk today, or tonight I should say, about attachment theory and how to have a healthy relationship, and kind of like where some relationships might go wrong, because I've been talking about relationships, so may as well just keep going on with this theme. It seems like people are liking this theme from what I can tell. I'm not getting a ton of comments, although thank you for those of you who are giving comments, but it just seems like from the behind the scenes, the statistics and stuff, that people are liking this topic, so I'm going to keep making it. But if you have a topic that you'd like me to talk about, please feel free to leave that in the comments or reach out to me. Usually you can find me on Facebook somewhere, and let me know. But I'm going to talk about attachment theory and a little bit from Sue Johnson's book called Hold Me Tight. Oh gosh, I hope I can get through this without like sniffling and sounding all gross. I'll have to try to edit it out if I do that. So, attachment. Attachment is something that starts when we're children. It's a natural process in us as a mammalian species. A good example of what attachment kind of looks like a little bit is when a bird is born and it has to stay in the nest, and it depends on its parents to feed it and to provide for it. So what does it do? When it's in distress, when it's feeling hungry, it cries out. And then the mother bird or whoever attunes to that child, the baby bird, and it comes back with food for the bird. And it meets the need of the bird, and then that quiets the stress inside the bird and it relaxes. So that's like a very basic, quick way to talk about what attachment is. And attachment is how we form our relationships with people, especially with close interpersonal relationships with people. So in a very real sense, the way that you related to your parents becomes the way that you relate to your intimate relationships in adulthood. If you related to them in the healthy way that we're supposed to co-regulate with each other in childhood, then you wind up with a secure attachment. And a secure attachment simply means that you have a secure base inside yourself, and that means that you feel a sense of security as you move throughout the world. You can generally like get into relationships and move out of relationships with ease. Not that you're detached, but you can be emotionally available. You can navigate that whole system without there being too much distress. What we're looking for is always a secure attachment. However, there are insecure attachments, and I've discussed them before, but we'll do a little quick recap. So you have anxious preoccupied attachment, which was actually a primary attachment style for me. Here comes the car. Let's wait a second. So you have preoccupied, anxious, and that is something that I've experienced, and that is when you continually cry out, basically, and you constantly seek reassurance, and you constantly want your intimate partner around. My understanding, if I'm getting this correct, it's been a while since I've reviewed the literature, is this is what happens when you have a parent who was sometimes available, sometimes not. Like when you needed things, sometimes you'd get them, sometimes you wouldn't, and it was kind of confusing. So you learned that if you needed your needs to get met, you needed to cry out more, cry out louder, be more demanding. So that will be a preoccupied, anxious attachment style. Before I get into the other ones, I want to note that your attachment style can change. I have changed mine from that style to secure, so don't feel like you're locked into anything. So that's one. Another one would be dismissive avoidant attachment, and that is when you do the opposite. When you have a need, you don't say it at all, and you dismiss the other person. So this could happen if your parent never met your needs. So typically what would happen is, like, let's say you had a parent that just, when you cried out, that emotionally dysregulated them and it freaked them out, and then you didn't get your needs met because you cried out. So you learned to not cry out and actually hold them at a distance, because holding them at a distance meant that they weren't going to become emotionally regulated, and then you might get your needs met. So typically it's a dismissive avoidant attachment, and when you attach to people, you usually want them further away from you. You don't want to open up to them. You don't want to be around them for too long. You feel like you need a lot of personal space. That would be dismissive avoidant. And then the final insecure attachment is fearful avoidant, which is like a combination of the two. And my understanding is this is something that happens in, like, foster care situations where the attachment figures, your primary attachment figures, are constantly switching out and there's no consistency to what's going on at all. So you become fearful, and sometimes you cry out a lot to try to get your needs met, and sometimes you withdraw a lot to try to get them met, because you really just don't even know what to do. So internally you're just all over the place, and you don't know how to attach to somebody, so that's what you do. So that's a basic review of attachment theory, and I'm going to get a little further into how this shows up in interpersonal relationships and how to have a healthy relationship. Before I continue on, I did mention that my attachment style has changed. I know that because I'm part of a study that's being done online, where every month they send me a survey and they measure my attachment style across different domains, specifically in relation to family members, in relation to friends, romantic partnerships, and just my general attachment style. And that's something that I want to mention also, is that we may have different attachment styles for different people in our lives. However, it's changed. I've watched it change, and I think a big part of why it's changed for me is because once I found out that I had PTSD, I worked on changing that PTSD. And in the process of doing that, I guess I learned enough tools to also change my attachment style. So I went from a general preoccupied, anxious attachment style towards a secure one, and I've been secure for probably a year now, at least a year, if not more than a year. And it's been interesting watching how it, like, shifts around depending on what's going on in my life, and I'm sure that's what they're measuring, is like what factors in somebody's life makes their attachment style change. But I just wanted to put it out there that, like, it can definitely be changed. You are not, like, stuck with whatever attachment style you wound up with because of the way that you attached with your parents. So that out of the way, I was quickly looking over the book Hold Me Tight by Sue Johnson. I love Sue Johnson's work. She works in the field of, like, couples therapy, and she specifically created a type of therapy called emotionally focused therapy, which is for couples. And I was excited about it. I wanted to do it with my ex. Again, my ex had no interest in working on the relationship, so unfortunately, as many books as I read, as much as I was trying to change things and work on things, my ex was not having it, so I didn't have the opportunity to explore that. However, I really love the idea of this therapy, and there's a lot of concepts that relate to attachment theory in what she talks about, so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. And let's see. So one concept in the couples therapy world that's just a general concept out there is this idea of the pursuer and the distancer. And sometimes there's different words used for it. Basically, there's one person who's chasing, and then there's another person who's withdrawing. And that seems to be a pattern that continually shows up in relationships. Here comes a car, so we'll cut this out. So it's a pattern that shows up in relationships very often, where one person's pursuing and one person is withdrawing, and it can be the same people. You can flip roles. Sometimes the person who pursues does the withdrawing, and sometimes the person who withdraws does the pursuing. But generally, like, you get locked into one of these roles, and then from then on, every time you have an argument, somebody's doing the pursuing and somebody's doing the withdrawing, and you never get anywhere because it's like this ongoing chase that happens over and over and over again. So I'm going to keep walking, and let's talk about some ways we can deal with that. Sue Johnson pioneered emotionally focused therapy, and she talks about the role of attachment in the way that couples relate to each other. And it was interesting to me as I reviewed my notes for this book, because she used the word trauma a lot to talk about what happens when we feel like our attachment needs are not being met. And I thought that was very interesting and poignant, and I would be hesitant to call it trauma in the same sense of trauma that we talk about when we talk about PTSD. However, for those of us who had traumatic childhoods, I don't see why it would not be appropriate to use that word. So that was interesting. So typically, what she was saying is that when we have conflict in a relationship, we're having an attachment, like our attachment alarm is going off. You know, we biologically have this built-in system for attachment. That's why it's there in childhood, and it continues with us into adulthood. It doesn't just go away because you move away from your parents. That's why we typically seek out intimate relationships. And so when we have some kind of conflict, we lose some sense of safety in our partner, or we feel like they're pulling away. And so our alarm goes off, our attachment alarm, and it kind of says like, oh no, get them back. Like, we got to do something about this. So the way we react is going to slightly depend on the way that our attachment style is, whether we are somebody who is more preoccupied, anxious, or dismissive avoidant, or maybe fearful avoidant, or secure. That's going to guide how we respond. Now, one thing that couples typically do that she mentions is get into this like list of finding who's to blame, and they point the finger at each other, and that's not productive. That's not going to get anywhere. Another thing that they do is they do the dance, where one person's pursuing and one person's withdrawing, and that's also not going to get you anywhere. And the third thing that happens, which is one of the most dangerous according to her, is when the person who's doing the pursuing stops pursuing and also withdraws. And you can see very easily how a relationship where two people are withdrawn is not going to stay together very well. She talks about how when we have our attachment system go off, we call out to our partner. And what we're seeking from our partner is to know that they are available to us. We're seeking to know that they will respond to us and that they will engage with us. So availability is simple. It means if I text you, you don't wait until the next day to text me back, for example. Or, you know, if I call out your name, you don't ignore me. And, you know, we have these little interactions throughout the day, so you don't have to get this perfect, but, you know, if somebody is consistently missing these cues for attachment, for crying out basically and saying, hey, like, I feel like you're pulling away, then that's going to cause a problem. So you have to recognize when your partner is calling out for you, when your partner wants to engage with you. And something that typically in the United States anyway, males seem to miss very often is they try to listen and give an intellectual response, find a solution for the problem that the other person is having, and that is not helping when it comes to attachment needs, because attachment needs are emotional needs, they are not intellectual needs. So when you offer a solution, you're not acknowledging the emotion, so it's a misstep to go in that direction, and you very often make your partner more frustrated when you try to offer a solution to something, as opposed to listening to the emotion behind it and recognizing that they want your attention and attunement. So what you would be better off doing, instead of trying to intellectualize and find a solution, which intellectualization is a form of withdrawing, is to acknowledge that they're upset and figure out, ask why they're upset, and and try to help them. And to help them meaning to listen, to do what soothes them. Maybe soothing them is putting your arm around them. Maybe soothing them is having your eye contact, things like that. All right, I'm forgetting the other stuff I needed to say, so I'm going to keep walking and hopefully it'll come back to me. Well, I'm not feeling so great and it's cold out, so this one's going to be short, but I kind of don't remember the extra part that I wanted to say here, but I will mention that she says it in the book. She talks about sex and how different kinds of sex can be reflective of attachment issues. Like pity sex is a attempt to get that attention from your partner, that attachment from your partner, but it's not healthy sex. It's not a healthy way of relating. And then there's, oh gosh, I forget what she called it, but basically like that cut off emotionless sex, which is also a way of trying to manage that attachment thing by withdrawing and not feeling emotions. Like, you can't have a relationship without emotions, guys. If you're in a relationship where it's cut off and you're distanced and you're not connecting with one another on that level, that's not a relationship. That's a pairing of people who are tolerating each other, who are working as if they're working in an organization, like they're on an assembly line. That's not a relationship. So be aware of that. If you are just in a functional relationship, you're not actually in a relationship. That's not what healthy attachment is, and that's not what relating to somebody is on that level. So remember, if you're pursuing too much, and sometimes pursuing too much looks like criticizing and blaming, as we talked about, or if you're withdrawing too much and you are running away, you don't want to talk to people, then you are screwing over your relationship, basically. It's not a relationship. So with that said, if there's another topic that you would like me to talk about, please let me know. Leave that down below in the comments. Maybe talking about this has made you think about the way that you attach and relate to people. So let me know what you think about all of this. Are you somebody who's more of a pursuer or a distancer, or how do you relate to people in interpersonal relationships? Let me know. And let me know what you'd like to talk about, and please subscribe and all that good stuff, and I'll see you next time.